Welcome to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 5:23 a.m. And of course, it is the 12th of May 2025. I told y'all, man. I told y'all. I said, when this man, the OG, the 45th, now the 47th, I told y'all, when he inked the trade deal between China and the United States, just to know his name would go down as one of the greatest to ever do it, one of the greatest to ever step into the Oval Office, one of the greatest to ever go to the White House, one of the greatest to ever move to Pennsylvania Avenue. It is what it is, man. With that being said, Trump is almost there, ladies and gentlemen. The trade deal between the United States and China is almost here. All right. Lutnick, Besant, and the other guy, they've been working hard for sure. But Besant definitely gave the update about the 90 days tariff pause from the United States to China. And now, trade deal is almost here, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Lydia Hu and David Webb, and welcome to a special edition of the Big Weekend Show. Tonight's story. It's all about the art of the deal. The Trump administration has announced a trade deal has been reached with China. This comes after the president hailed the great progress made during yesterday and today's meetings in Switzerland. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer detailed the negotiations earlier today.
We made substantial progress between the United States and China in these very important trade talks. We will be giving details tomorrow, but I can tell you that the talks were productive.
The president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs, and we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency.
This all comes as President Trump is set to take his first trip to the Middle East during his second term. The president is set to visit with leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates starting Tuesday, as the U.S. held another round of nuclear negotiations today with Iran. Lucas Tomlinson is live in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with all the latest. Hi, Lucas.
Well, good evening, Tom. When President Trump first returned to the White House, his first call with a foreign leader was here to Saudi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And like his first term, President Trump is taking his first official overseas trip here to Saudi Arabia. As you mentioned, he's also going to continue on to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates as well. You mentioned the negotiations going on overseas, not just in Oman, the talks with the Iranians, but in Geneva, where Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trump's top trade representative Jamieson Greer spoke to their Chinese counterparts. Earlier, North Dakota Senator John Hoeven said this is an important first step.
This is very encouraging. Obviously, they're not going to have a deal fully done. You've got Jamieson Greer over there, the U.S. Trade Representative, and Secretary Bessent. That's the first string, no doubt about it. But they're still going to come back and talk with President Trump and all those kind of things. But the important point is they made real progress and have a framework to get to a deal.
Bessent said in Geneva, details of what the White House called a deal will be released tomorrow. Officials said it's likely to follow the model of the U.S.-UK trade agreement, which reduced tariffs on aluminum, steel, and cars. As I mentioned, there's some other negotiations going on today. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, was in neighboring Oman, meeting with Iranian officials over its nuclear program. Both sides touted progress and said they will meet again. They've already met 4 times. Now, some good news, Tom. Hamas said late today would release the last living American hostage held in Gaza, 21-year-old Edan Alexander from New Jersey, who served in the Israeli military. Israel says there will be no ceasefire during the exchange, and Hamas said that release is scheduled for Tuesday. And, of course, that's the same day President Trump arrives here in Saudi Arabia. So some good news here from the region, Tom.
Very good news. Thank you, Lucas. Okay, let's do some analysis. But Molly, maybe get your take on that news. The last living hostage is being released.
That would be remarkable, and I really, truly, deeply hope that that is true. Witkoff is expected to go to Israel. We hope that Ilan Alexander, he's now 21. He was 19 when he was taken hostage, the last living American hostage in Hamas captivity, and hopefully that does come to pass. Ultimately, big things. Lucas Tomlinson there at the end of his report said some good news. And I think that is the case. For the last couple days of the Trump administration on war and peace, on diplomacy, on the economy, teasing ahead to potentially some big headlines to come on trade on Monday. Fascinating. But we definitely hope that Alexander comes home.
Yeah, let's get your take on some of this. We got some video here. Let's do the clip of Howard Lutnick on the China negotiations.
This is just a China problem right now, right? We have 145% tariff. They have 125% tariff. Those tariffs are too high to do business. But that's why they're talking right now. The rest of the world is 10%. He's there to see if we can reset the conversation, and he's at it right now. But that's the objective, to de-escalate.
Okay, Lydia, let's get your take on this. What are they going to be talking about on Fox Business about these negotiations? They're giving the good news. They're saying it's the beginning of a deal, but how much of the deal is it?
Yeah, that's what we're all waiting to see. I mean, I think you might hear some surprise, you know, if we really have the framework of a deal and a deal actually penned, penciled, signed on the dotted line by tomorrow. That's very fast. I think faster than what a lot of people were expecting. I'm not sure that anyone really expected that China would be among the first. You know, we had the deal with the UK just last week. Now we're having China with just a second. I think you can probably expect there to be a reduction in tariffs. You know, the President Trump alluded to that. The other questions remain, though. What are we going to see in terms of the non-tariff barriers? You know, we import 3 times as much from China than what they import from us. We want more access to their market just as much as they want access to ours. And there are things that China has done that has made them not such great and fair players with this. You know, currency manipulation, their use of labor to make their products so much cheaper. I think there are a lot of questions about whether or not that they're going to respect intellectual property moving forward with American firms that are doing business over there. So there are a lot of details to be ironed out. I thought it was very interesting that our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is very smart in the negotiation, kind of said, you know, we've made great progress. He did not say that there's a deal. You know, other people are talking about is if there's already a deal across the finish line. So we'll see exactly how this develops.
He's
tomorrow.
kind of trying to, this is what they do. Trump kind of comes out with the good news and then Bessent backs off it a little bit. That's kind of the pattern, isn't it?
I think our Treasury Secretary is very smart and respectful of the president and knows that there's not really a deal until the president says there's a deal. So we'll wait and see what happens.
David wants to get in on China, but I'm going to throw something into the mix here, David.
Throw it all together.
The Iran news. Let's get Representative Jared Moskowitz on the Iran nuclear talks.
President Trump has the capability, we've seen it many times before, right now to put maximum pressure on Iran, use that tough language, and see if we can get the dismantling of those nuclear facilities. If not, I'd like to see President Trump say that he will dismantle it one way or another. Let the Iranians know, again, all options are on the table.
Okay, David, let's get in on the Iran talks here.
They're actually all tied together. And if you think about even the time difference, right now it's nighttime where Scott and the trade rep are. So whatever's been done has been done already, unless they're working up past midnight. Iran, China, the deal with us. China's the big player in the Middle East. They buy their oil from Iran. They have a lot of power in the Middle East. If you think about it, their military equipment was even used in the Pakistani attack in India. At the center of a lot of this is Chinese goods, Chinese cheap goods, and this deficit has to be dealt with because China gets the benefit and the world gets the deficit, frankly, to put it in those terms. We have got to get China back on track as best we can. And Trump uses one thing which we haven't seen played yet, to the point of whether Bessent is correcting or cleaning up. He's really not. It's Trump's way of operating because Trump has told him before, and we've seen this, I'll go back to the table. And in the case of UK, he got another $1 billion on the table. In the end, he is the president. He will make the decision. So they're working as a 1-2 punch. And with China at the middle of this, and think about the Swiss, They have an embassy with Iran. They're a linchpin to that. China. There's a reason we're there. It's not just because that's the place to do the deal. It's where there are multiple people that can be involved and a lot of signals to be sent.
Yeah, Molly, what do you think is going to be? There's so much news today, right?
I know.
What do you think is going to be Monday's number one thing that the White House is pushing?
I think they're pushing whatever it is that they've got on the table for China. They're kind of teasing that ahead and saying we're going to have the big news tomorrow. And what it is, hopefully we'll find out then. And as you mentioned, the best set forward and backward, and maybe the president has some big news. So I think that's the big one ahead. But there's another headline here. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's ready to meet personally with Vladimir Putin. And that's a whole other part of this. And this might be the most challenging part of the diplomacy that's going on right now, where we're seeing some successes potentially in Israel with the potential release of this final American that they're still holding. And in China, we're seeing the economic success. But the Ukraine and Russia challenge seems to still be one of the toughest ones.
Maybe this is where Molly is. She's forcing me to change the subject to that very thing. China isn't the only adversary making news today. Russian President Vladimir Putin is proposing direct peace talks with Ukraine this week in Turkey to try to end the 3+ years of fighting. President Trump posted today on Truth Social urging Ukraine to agree to this meeting immediately to end the bloodbath, seemingly backing off his demands for a 30-day ceasefire before talks could start. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is doubling down on the calls for a ceasefire. He says he will be waiting for Putin in Turkey on Thursday. Okay, David, I bet you have an opinion about this. So Putin is saying maybe no ceasefire. He wants to start talks while the bullets are still flying. Why is that?
You know, with Vladimir Putin, it's beyond chess, and you're not sure. The uncertainty. Russia has a lot of influence in Turkey, right down to the rail lines. The rail widths are Russian widths. Their influence there is important. Also, it's a place for them to hedge against NATO, of which Turkey is a member, by staying in a strong relationship with Erdogan. So from that point, Putin may be willing to go and have a talk, but you can never read ahead in what he's going to do. Zelensky has his own problems internally in the Ukraine. One, he's got no infrastructure of any sort. You've got people who may return from the battlefield. There's not a medical infrastructure. There are a lot of other social services, a government that's fractured. And he's got his hard right flank that he has to figure a way to get out of this, stop the bloodshed if he wants to, and find a way to keep himself out of the sights of his hard right flank in the Ukraine. So going to Turkey, waiting for Putin, puts the onus on Putin, who's coming off his victory day and a good feeling in Russia, and might make it more, I don't know, palpable, maybe more easy to find an off-ramp, which the off-ramp's been off the table for a long time.
Yeah, well, Lydia, we're certainly in better shape than we were when Zelensky was, having a tense meeting in the White House not long ago.
That's right. We've got a mineral deal signed. It seems like the relationships are patched up. I was just thinking that, even as it stands right now, I think that the way talks are progressing is evidence that the American First policy and agenda is working. You had European leaders over the weekend gathering with Zelensky to talk about his support of him, and they're phoning it into Trump to say, this is what we propose, this is how we're going to support a ceasefire, this is how we're going to support a peace brokering. That is what President Trump has wanted. He's wanted European nations to step forward and take more responsibility for securing peace in their own region rather than relying on the United States to fight all of their battles. That's been a priority. It's something that he's been saying needs to happen. I think we're seeing it happening in real time.
Yeah, Molly, there's almost too many headlines to deal with at this point, right?
There really are. And interestingly enough, Zelensky is calling Putin out directly as well. He says, personally, I hope this time Putin won't be looking for an excuse as to why he can't make it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully there's some big progress there as well. But there are a lot of balls up and being juggled all over the globe right now.
All right, coming up in a brand new hour.
Just wild. Trump is literally changing the game right before our eyes. He told us during the campaign, he said, America first. We're going to secure the border. We're going to renegotiate trade deals. We're going to make America rich. We're going to end the wars. Guess what? It's coming to fruition. This is just legendary. This is legendary, ladies and gentlemen. Adam Levin. Mark Levin. There we go.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Happy Mother's Day, all you moms out there. My wife, my mother-in-law, my beautiful mom upstairs. And God bless to all of you. I'm glad you're here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have two great guests tonight. We have Senator Ted Cruz and Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. Get into some very serious matters there. But before I do, I think it's important with all the media reports coming out of the United States and Israel, many of them not true, to at least get to the basics here. So we, the American people, can communicate what we believe to the capitals all over the world, in the Middle East and here. First of all, let's be clear about what we Americans believe and don't believe. We hate terrorists. We hate terrorist regimes. We despise them. The Middle East is filled with terrorists and terrorist regimes. Americans do not like Iran and the regime that runs it. They're terrorists. They keep threatening to destroy us and our friends, the Israelis. They're trying to get nuclear weapons and put them on intercontinental ballistic missiles. We reject it. I speak for tens of millions of red-blooded Americans. I speak for Christians and Jews and others alike. This is the view of the American people. That's number one. Americans hate Hamas. We hate terrorists, butchers, Nazis. We hate men that kill babies, that decapitate babies, that rape women and burn people alive and attack young teenagers at festivals. We hate them. We despise them. We got real questions about Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11. And the more that comes out, as the FBI just released some information about 6 to 8 months ago, the worse it looks that Saudi Arabia did in fact have a hand in helping Al-Qaeda attack us and kill over 2,000 of our fellow citizens. That's what we Americans reject and believe. We know who the good guys are. 80% of us support the state of Israel, our holy land for Jews and Christians. And most of us despise the terrorist and the terrorist regimes, all of which are one form of dictatorship or another. So that's the foundation. Let's begin there. If only Israel would accept the Palestinian state as a condition of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, if that's a condition, then who cares if they join the Abraham Accords? Accept a ceasefire with Qatar-funded Hamas, so Hamas, you see, can rebuild and strike Israel again. That's not going to happen, whether Qatar likes it or not. Accept the deal with Iran that does not fully dismantle their nuclear program. That better damn well not happen either. But then we'll have peace in our time if only Israel, the only democracy, will accept its own destruction, will agree to its own suicide with the Hamas terrorists, with the Qatar terrorists, with the Iranian terrorists, and so forth and so on. Then we'll have peace. No, we won't. And there's tens of millions of us who are going to object, and loudly. We are a silent, massive majority. That can change overnight, ladies and gentlemen, and it will change overnight. Saudi Arabia, our new friends. I hope they are, but let's be clear. 9/11 Families United, which serves thousands of families and survivors of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, said tonight the release of the 2016 FBI report summarizing the Bureau's long secret investigation of the Saudi government involvement in supporting the 9/11 hijackers puts to bed any doubts about Saudi complicity in the attacks. And they're going to tell Israel they need a two-state solution? No, you're not. You don't get to tell anybody anything. Even with the unfortunate number of redactions, they write, the report contains a host of bombshell new revelations implicating numerous Saudi government officials in a coordinated effort to mobilize an essential support network for the first arriving 9/11 hijackers. The range of contacts at critical moments among these Saudi government officials, Al-Qaeda, and hijackers is stunning. Those are our new friends, the Saudis. How about Qatar? Qatar, which has spent billions of dollars to destroy our colleges and universities. Qatar, that is behind the Marxist, Islamist riots in our streets, the massive anti-Semitism, groups like Students for Justice in Palestine. I want to prove this to you.
We will free Mumia because it is our job to destroy imperialism, destroy the United States, and destroy capitalism and the system of extraction that it relies on to perpetuate itself. And we will do it by organizing in a manner that actively undermines and destabilizes the legitimacy and the power of the state and the power and legitimacy of capitalism.
So Temple University, my alma mater, by the way,
Yo.
put out a statement, part of which reads, "The person is identified in this video as a member of Students for Justice in Palestine. SJP is not a recognized student organization at Temple and remains suspended because of its actions that violated the Student Conduct Code. Good for them." Now, we reached out to this punk, but he didn't respond. By the way, for the anti-Semites out there, did you hear Israel once? Not once. Zionism? No, didn't hear that. Jews? No. Now, we save that for American podcasters and subscribers. We want to talk about Israel and the Jews and that they're dragging us into a war. The war is here. President Trump talks about the enemy within. That's the enemy within, being funded by Qatar, being funded by the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, being funded by Communist China. They're here now, they're on our college campuses, they're in our culture, they're in our newsrooms, they're in the Democrat Party, and they're in a growing little cabal of the Republican Party. They're here right now. That's an example of it. Now, what about these nuclear weapons in Iran? There's a brand new nuclear site that was just uncovered the other day. It's been reported in the media, although barely. Reported by this network, a brand new nuclear site that way into the ground. Their main nuclear site is 350 feet under the ground, so deep that it requires the biggest conventional bombs we have to take them out. And then we hear, but Iran wants a civilian energy program, a domestic nuclear energy program. Do people think we're stupid? We're Americans. We're actually very smart. We were hit by the Islamist Nazis on 9/11. Our embassies were hit by the Islamist Nazis. Our Marine barracks were hit by the Islamist Nazis. We have special forces in the field today to try and protect us from the Islamist Nazis. Terrorism isn't a theory. It's not a maybe. It is an is. It is here. It has hit us. Oh, it's 7,000 miles away, except when it hit us in Manhattan. Now imagine what these fools would do with a nuclear weapon. I don't give a damn if they want nuclear power for domestic energy. Stop lying to us. If that's the case, why are you burying those centrifuges 350 feet under the ground in cement bunkers? Why are you hiding the other nuclear sites? This isn't about domestic energy, a country that's floating in oil and selling it to the communist Chinese. We, the American people, we are smart. We hate terrorists. We hate terrorist regimes. We were hit by Saudi Arabia. Qatar's funding the enemy in our own country. Iran wants to attack us. How do we know? They say so. That's how we know. Now, these are the truths. This is reality. It's not about warmongers or neocons. It's about eyes wide open. You see, millions and millions of you agree with me. Millions of you. Tens of millions of you. You don't agree with the fifth column isolationists. We can manage Iran. No, we can't. Once the genie is out of the box, it's out of the box. Well, Iran would never attack us. Really? They attacked us before. Ask the people in New York City if that's what they think. Ask the people in Northern Virginia if that's what they think. Ask the people in central Pennsylvania. I stand for defending the American people. That's the job of the American government. Congress, the executive branch, all of it. We the people, our national security. What is in our best interest is to make sure they never get the bomb. And stop pussyfooting around with other terrorist organizations and putting pressure on Israel. Israel, you need to commit suicide. No, they don't. No, they shouldn't. And tens of millions of us stand with the United States and Israel, not with Qatar or Hamas or Iran or Saudi Arabia. No, we don't. That's the truth. We have a midterm election coming up in the not so distant future. We better damn well win that thing, or we're going to be spending 2 years after that election on subpoenas, on indictments, on charges, on investigations, on impeachment, and the Democrats will destroy our agenda, the tremendous Trump agenda. And it is tremendous. It is historic. But if we play footsies with the enemy because of a small cabal of fifth-column isolationists who don't know anything from anything, who walk around sloganeering like Marxists, forever wars, neocons, like that's a response to Iran that's trying to muscle up with nuclear weapons, we're going to get our asses kicked. That's the truth. I know. I speak to people every day on my radio show. There are millions and millions of them. They agree with me. Now, what if Iran gets nukes? Well, look at this. This comes out of the media. This is just from, when is it? CBS News Thursday. Pakistan accuses India of serious provocation as nuclear-armed neighbors accuse each other of new attacks. They're at swords points with nuclear weapons. That's a problem, don't you think? Look at this, Friday, North Korea. Just this Friday, Seoul, South Korea. North Korea leader Kim Jong supervised tests of short-range ballistic missile systems that simulated nuclear counterstrikes against the U.S. and South Korean forces. Wow. Can you imagine if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, the threats they'll make, the water lanes they'll shut down, everything that they'll be able to do? Should we pass that on to the next generation and the generation after that? Is that what we want, America? I don't think so. We just want to be able to hope that a terrorist regime won't use terrorism against us? And what is this that, you know, if we can get a good deal with them, I forget who said this. I wish I could remember, I would tell you who. If we can get a good deal with them, well, then Iran will join the economic world economy and the people will flourish. Iran is a police state. It's got a massive prison system, torture chambers. It slaughters its dissidents. The people there have risen up twice to try and overthrow that regime, twice, without support from the United States. First under Obama and then Biden. The people want nothing to do with that regime. Let us not pretend that if we can get some deal, that all of a sudden, Iran, the terrorists, oh yes, Khomeini, and the other inbreds, that all of a sudden will be, yes, we would love to be part of your economic system. Oh, yes, yes, yes. This isn't about peace in our time. There's not going to be peace in our time with a nuclear Iran. They're evil. They don't believe in peace. Sometimes there's evil. They're evil. Open your Bible. You'll see. Good versus evil. It's a forever war. I would tell the forever war sloganeers. Not because we want it to be a forever war, because it is a forever war. Now, I want to get on to another subject, but we're going to be monitoring all of this very, very, very closely. Tens of millions of us who up until now have kept pretty damn quiet about it, but not anymore. I want to talk to you about the courts again, because this is disgusting. To listen now to Sotomayor, absolutely disgusting. 220 lawsuits as of today in 100 days against the Trump administration. Unprecedented. No administration's ever seen anything like it. So it's a campaign. It is the collusion of radical left-wing groups, radical left-wing law firms and lawyers, and radical left-wing lawyers appointed as judges. And not only are there over 200 of these cases brought, in fact, 220 lawsuits. As of May 8th of this past week, the president has lost, at least temporarily, 144 of them. Wow, he must be some dictator. No. The tyranny and despotism is in the judiciary. That's where the tyranny and despotism is. Right here. Now, Sotomayor. So these radical left-wing coup judges who've become justices now feel that they can just go public and spew their political opinions in order to try and communicate with the lower court judges, their comrades. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't listen to Trump, and they turn on Trump. He's threatening you. He's threatening the independence of the court. Not one of these left-wing justices said a word when the Supreme Court was under attack, when they were talking about adding seats, when they were talking about packing it, when you had left-wingers marching up and down the streets of conservative Supreme Court justices over the Dobbs opinion, when they wouldn't even bring out the marshals to protect them, when Chuck Schumer specifically endangered 2 justices, specifically. Not one of these justices opened their mouths. Only now, because they like what's taking place.
Uh-oh.
That is the evisceration of separation of powers. Sonia Sotomayor, she's the most unethical justice of the bunch. Liberal Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor urged lawyers Thursday night to stand up at a time when the profession is under attack from the Trump administration. Speaking at a meeting hosted by the American Bar Association, boy, do they stink. Just saying. The nation's biggest legal group also said it was an act of solidarity. Act of solidarity. The judges and justices, all unelected, standing together against a president of the United States who won in a landslide. And all the uncertainty that exists, she said at this moment, this is our time to stand up and be heard. Right now, we can't lose the battles we are facing, she added. If you're not used to fighting losing battles, don't become a lawyer. Our job is to stand for the people who can't do it themselves. For me, being here with you is an act of solidarity. Imbecilic. And then, of course, are the comments last week by Jackson. And what's next? The next left-wing justice next week? I want to remind you folks of something. They are way, way out of line. And if clueless John Roberts doesn't do something about it, the United States Congress must, and they must do so soon. I brought to your attention Professor Raul Berger, the late great Berger, some time ago, and he writes, a common historicist fallacy is to import our 20th century, now 21st century, conception into the minds of the founders. At the adoption of the Constitution, the notion that judges, for example, could make law as an instrument of social change was altogether alien to colonial thinking. Never entered their minds, ever. Then I want to turn to Federalist number 78, written by Hamilton. Whoever attentively considers the different departments of power must perceive, remember this was written to support the Constitution and get it approved in the states, that in a government in which they are separated from each other, the judiciary, from the nature of its functions, will always be the least dangerous to the political rights of the Constitution, because it will be least in a capacity to annoy or to injure them. The executive not only dispenses the honors, but holds the sword of the community. The legislature not only commands the purse, but prescribes the rules by which the duties and rights of every citizen are to be regulated. The judiciary, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse, no direction, either of the strength or of the wealth of the society, and can take no active resolution whatever. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment. It must ultimately depend upon the aid of the executive arm, even for the efficacy of its judgments. And he goes on to write, it is utterly improper for judges who are about to give lifetime appointments under the Constitution, utterly improper for them to substitute their personal views for that of the representative bodies of the people. Utterly improper. And it's even more than that, as Berger pointed out in his book, and he noted that the judicial role is one of judgment, not will. He cites Judge William Cranch of the Circuit Court for the District of Columbia back in 1803. In a government which is emphatically styled a government of laws, the least possible range ought to be left for the discretion of the judge. The least possible range. Then we have in Ware versus Hilton, 1796, Justice James Iredell, who'd been also a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. This is the Supreme Court. There are considerations of policy, considerations of extreme magnitude, and certainly entirely incompetent to the examination and decision of a court of justice. And it goes on and on and on. Early justices of the court, early state judges on their courts, the Constitutional Convention, the ratification conventions, the Federalist Papers, on and on and on. Basically saying what these lower courts are doing today is tyranny. John Roberts, you may want to read some of this stuff and educate yourself. You are, after all, the Chief Justice of the United States. It's time that you act like it. I'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Shout out to Mark Levin. But I just want to say something. I am looking at the stock market right now, and everything is going up. Okay. Of course, Bitcoin started going up as soon as the UK and the United States announced their joint trade deal, and the new updates in the trade deal. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, Ethereum, all types of cryptocurrency started going up. Now that China is now making a deal with the United States, and there's a 90 days pause in tariff. Okay, we're going to check that out as well. But can you imagine what's going to happen? The stock market. Do you know how crazy the numbers are about to get? I'm telling y'all, man.
Welcome back, America. We have Senator Ted Cruz with us. He is on the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Ted Cruz, welcome. It's my understanding that the vast majority of Republicans in the Senate and the House are saying Iran must dismantle its nuclear program. It's not a joke. Yes. We know what it means when people talk about a civil or civilian nuclear program. We're not going to be fooled. They must dismantle their program. Is that what you understand?
That is exactly right. And I got to say, Mark, there's a real contrast between the strength that President Trump has shown with respect to Iran and the weakness and appeasement that Joe Biden showed for 4 years. The first term, President Trump took on Iran directly, pulled out of the disastrous Obama-Iran nuclear deal. He ended the civilian nuclear waivers. He ended the oil waivers. And the result, maximum pressure, put the Iranian economy into free fall. Their oil sales fell from 1 million barrels a day of oil down all the way down to 300,000 barrels of oil. When Joe Biden came into office, the Iranian economy was in shambles, and the Ayatollah and the mullahs were teetering and near collapse. But sadly, Biden reversed everything. He did complete appeasement. He stopped enforcing the oil sanctions, and as a result, the Ayatollah's oil sales skyrocketed from 300,000 barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. That's $100 billion that Joe Biden and the Democrats gave the Ayatollah. And the Ayatollah is using it to fund the IRGC to attack and kill Americans. The Ayatollah is using that to fund Hamas and Hezbollah. In a very real sense, Joe Biden and the money he gave the Ayatollah funded October 7th. Now that Donald Trump is back in office, he's drawn a clear red line. Iran must dismantle their nuclear capacity. They must shut down their centrifuges. It is the only thing that is verifiable is full dismantlement. And I have every confidence the president is going to hold that line.
I do. But I don't have any confidence in the Iranians who lie and cheat and steal and murder.
Yes.
And so the question is, how can we expect a regime that does all those things and is not abided by anything it's agreed to, anything it has promised over the course of the last 15 years? So here we are at the 11th hour. Here we are at the 11th hour trying to deal with this. How can we trust them? Or better put, we're not going to trust them. How do we make sure that they do what we tell them they must do?
Well, listen, we can't trust them because we know that they lie, and they lie over and over and over again. It's worth noting the Ayatollah right now today is actively trying to murder Donald J. Trump, has hired hitmen trying to murder the President of the United States. The Ayatollah is also actively trying to murder the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. They have hired hitmen that are targeting former senior U.S. officials and the sitting President of the United States. These are not people who can be trusted, which is why the objective must be full dismantlement, must be the centrifuges disassembled, destroyed, taken out. And as President Trump said recently, we can do that either nicely or not so nicely. Nicely if they agree and we go in and dismantle them ourselves, or not so nicely is if Iran refuses to negotiate, we have the capability to take out these nuclear facilities. And I got to say, Mark, you and I have talked about this. Listen, there are some voices in the Trump administration that are on the isolationist wing of foreign policy that say, let's not worry about Iran. Let's not do anything about Iran. And listen, I am someone who is very reluctant to use military force, but Iran is trying to build nuclear weapons because Iran wants to be able to threaten to use nuclear weapons, and they might even use them. And I believe a nuclear Iran is an unacceptable threat of seeing an atomic bomb detonated in the skies of New York or the skies of Los Angeles. And so our commander-in-chief, President Trump, I don't think he's going to allow that risk. We are going to demand the centrifuges, the nuclear capability be dismantled, and they either do so willingly or they'll be dismantled unwillingly.
And I want these fifth column isolationists to understand this is the view of tens of millions of us. It's not the view of warmongers and neocons and the other sloganeering that they do. Red-blooded Americans who are onto these terrorists, who are onto Iran, and do not want them to have a nuclear weapon which they could use the way they attacked us on 9/11. We'll be right back.
Whoa, what do you guys think about Ted Cruz and the way Ted Cruz was going in? Ted Cruz, yo, he ain't playing around. Shout out to Mark, too. All right, here we go. Tom Homan. What is going on in Newark, New Jersey?
To Border Czar Tom Homan. Tom, thank you so much for being here. You know, just watching that body cam video, absolutely incredible to see that went down. And before we get to it, I'd like you to also hear what the Newark mayor had to say also in his defense.
We ask them to obey our laws, to obey the policies and rules here in the city and the state of New Jersey, not to run roughshod over the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the 4th, the 5th, the 14th Amendment, that everybody on this soil deserves due process.
Tom, he's saying they're the good guys here.
Well, look, he's not very smart. I mean, bottom line is that's what the facility's all about.
They're the good guys.
This facility's about due process. This facility is where we put illegal aliens. People in the country illegally, first of all, if you're in the country illegally, they're being detained. And they were screaming and yelling about due process and 14 and all this in the Constitution. This is where due process happens. We have to detain them to go through the due process of, sometimes seeing a judge, sometimes they already have final orders. It's ranging removal to their countries, they're getting travel documents to their countries and making sure all the administrative processes are followed. So this is exactly what the facility means. And I'll tell you this, I can guarantee you this facility has higher detention standards than any New Jersey facility. This facility has highest detention standards in the industry. You compare that to any jail in New Jersey, and you'd be shocked how high these detention standards are.
You know, you have members of Congress there as well, and they're arguing that this was a matter of oversight. I want you to listen to what Congressman Robert Menendez Jr. said yesterday.
We were there to conduct oversight. It's a newly opened facility. They want to spin people. This is exactly what they've done their entire administration. They talk about criminals. They're separating families.
Conducting oversight in this manner. Tom.
No, it's not the proper way to do it. There's a proper way to conduct oversight. There's a way to make appointments, go in this facility. You don't break into a facility when a bus full of criminals are being, brought into that facility. This is about the safety and security of the employees. This is about the safety and security of the illegal aliens. And it's about the safety and security of the public. You just don't make an entry that gate. You don't make an unauthorized entry while they're moving a bus of criminals in the facility. There's a right way and wrong way to do it. And look, I've said from day one, you cannot support ICE. You can go ahead and support sanctuary cities, but you can't cross that line. You can't cross the line of impediment. You can't cross the line of knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien. You certainly can't trespass in a facility that's contracted by the U.S. government to house criminals. That'd be like breaking into a state prison, not going through the proper protocols. This creates a huge safety crisis, and these elected politicians know that. This isn't about due process. This isn't about constitutional rights. This is about politics. They simply don't want these people removed from this country. They don't want immigration enforcement in this country. And that's what it's all about. They can try to hide it all they want with these protests around the facility, but we can continue to do what we're doing. That facility's got some of the worst of the worst. We're keeping President Trump's promise to the American people that elected him for the sole reason of securing the border and removing these public safety threats from the communities. That's exactly what they're going to do. They can stand out and scream all they want. They can trespass, they'll be arrested. If they impede, they'll be arrested. If they knowingly harbor and conceal, they'll be arrested. We're going to do this job for the American people.
Well, they got the news cameras out there, which I'm sure was part of the goal. Meanwhile, the administration is facing more legal roadblocks over plans to expel illegal immigrants from the country. A U.S. judge ruled this week that deportation flights to Libya would violate a court order a day after reports surfaced that the administration was preparing to do just that. How are you handling these rulings?
Well, it's ridiculous. You got district court judges, district court judges, putting in nationwide injunctions against us doing our job. I mean, again, it isn't about the rule of law. Is you got these, these outrageous judges trying to stop us from doing what the American people want us to do. We're simply enforcing the laws on the books. We're enforcing laws acted by Congress. Unlike the last administration, who not only ignored the law, they actively violated the law when they allowed millions of people and abuse of the parole program come to the United States. We are enforcing laws that Congress enacted, including the Alien Enemies Act. That was a law enacted by Congress. They wrote that law. The president signed that law. We're using the laws on the books to remove the worst of the worst as fast as we can. And we got these outlandish judges throughout the country that are simply trying to stop us, putting roadblocks up. But again, when it gets to a higher court, we'll win this because we're simply enforcing the laws on the books. They're just trying to slow us down, but we're going to keep moving forward.
I only have a few seconds left, but finally, ABC reported this week that the DOJ is investigating the 2022 traffic stop of Kilmar Obrego Garcia. Apparently, he's accused of acting as a taxi service for a convicted felon transporting illegal migrants across the United States. Are you familiar with that report, and what are the next steps for the administration in this case?
Well, look, it's being totally investigated by HSI and FBI, but when you talk about trafficking, who is he trafficking, right? We need to see, is he trafficking just illegal labor? Or is he trafficking people that are being forced labor? Is he trafficking women and children who are being sex slavery? I mean, is he trafficking on known suspected terrorists? We don't know. That's why we're going to investigate this. We know he's involved. We got to find out exactly what organization he was involved with. We know he's associated with the TDA, but when it comes to trafficking, they can traffic anybody from some illegal alien looking for a better life to an unknown terrorist that's come to this country to do us harm. That's why this needs to be investigated right to the fullest extent.
Tom Homan, we appreciate so much you being with us on this Saturday morning. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. What do you think about Tom Homan? Definitely, I think he's doing what he has to do, what he was put in there as the border czar to do by the 45th and now the 47th President of the United States. What do you guys think about Letitia James? What is going on with Letitia James, ladies and gentlemen?
Now, Deputy Attorney General Todd Bland. Sir, congratulations to you, and thank you for giving us a little bit of your time here on this Saturday evening. Greatly appreciate it. I want to start with just getting your take on what we just witnessed, some of that video there, but also the comments from Acting U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alina Habba, on this democratic action that we saw yesterday outside of the New Jersey ICE facility. Take a listen.
The reality of the situation is there are rapists, murderers in there. So this whole political points game, I'm really not in line with. And you got to just enforce the law. That's my job. If you break the law, it will be enforced no matter who you are.
Todd, I want to get your thoughts. Is it politics at play here? Are Democrats pulling stunts, essentially, showing their priorities are illegal immigrants over the safety of American citizens? And what charges could they potentially face? There is body cam footage here that can be looked at as well. Todd.
For sure. I very much agree with the U.S. Attorney, with Alina Habba and what she said. What happened yesterday was horrible. And the mayor going in, literally storming into a federal facility with detainees, many of whom are violent criminals, and then repeatedly ignoring multiple law enforcement officers asking him to leave. He had no right to be there. And you had congressmen as well physically assaulting law enforcement. It was a horrible display. I feel terrible for our law enforcement officers who are working every day to keep this country safe, that they had to go through that. And this Department of Justice, General Bondi and I have talked multiple times. I've talked with the U.S. Attorney on multiple occasions since yesterday. What happened yesterday was a very sad day for this country, and we will respond in kind for sure.
Todd, this is David Webb. Now, we know the DOJ has launched a criminal investigation into New York AG Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud, and she's being accused of listing as her primary residence in violation of New York law as being in Virginia, despite her being that elected official in New York. Now, she's blaming the whole thing on the Trump administration. Watch this.
This is nothing more than an extension of his revenge, his retribution, and he finally got up to the J's. I am not fearful. I am fearless.
So where does this case stand right now, and what kind of penalties could Letitia James face?
Look, obviously, I'm not going to comment on an ongoing criminal investigation. It wouldn't be proper for me to do so. I will say that the Attorney General of New York has literally spent her entire career going after the President of the United States and his entire family. So it's pretty ironic to hear the Attorney General comment on alleged misconduct in some of her mortgage, of the loans that she's received, when she has spent her entire career trying to destroy President Trump, and not only President Trump, but his children, his family, his business. And so, look, I'm not going to comment on the ongoing investigation to the extent that we are investigating, but it's my job as the Deputy Attorney General.
I'm not even going to cap, yo. Letitia James definitely, she definitely said Trump is done for as of last year, 2023. They really dragged this man through the mud, but he won the election. The American people said, you know what? We do not care. We won this man in the Oval Office. And the fact is, if you followed Trump, if you've read his book, if you listen to Trump, you would know that this man never backs down. And if you do him wrong, if you come after him, his family, his business, he's going to come after you. He's not that kind of person he never lets anything slide. Nothing is going to slide with Trump. I'm sorry. Just because he's the president, he's going to let it slide. He ain't that kind of person. He is the old OG that built his business in New York. Now, are we going to say, well, he's weaponizing the government? But he was a victim of what these people are complaining about right now. His home in Mar-a-Lago was raided. You saw his mugshot. You saw him in courtrooms. He was the first convicted felon president. So it's like they almost got this guy, like almost. I mean, 2 attempted, I don't want to say it on YouTube, but they almost got this guy twice. So it's a blessing. It's luck that he's still here and to be the president of the United States. So I don't think Letitia James is just going to walk. I'm not even going to cap, because I feel like at this point, Trump is really going for everything.
To make sure that we protect every single American and investigate crimes where they are. But as it relates to the Attorney General of New York, I have watched for several years what she has done to President Trump, to President Trump's children, to his business. She ran on a campaign saying, I will go after President Trump. and then she did it. And so to hear her complain about what's going on right now is I mean, if you Google hypocrisy, I think you'll see a photo of her.
Todd, you're right, because we remember those campaign promises that she made, and we watched that case unfold, that civil fraud case, which is still on appeal. We all remember that well, so the irony here really cannot be understated. So great points there, Todd. This is Lydia Hu. Thanks for joining us. I want to ask you about the DEA, because the DEA this week made a huge, the biggest fentanyl bust in DEA history, seizing over 900 pounds of this illicit drug. And we know 6 of the 16 people arrested in the scheme are here in the United States illegally. So, Todd, the question we have is, do we expect to see more busts just like this in the near future? And what can you tell us about the DOJ's efforts to fight drug trafficking?
Absolutely. And not only the DEA, all of our law enforcement partners, the DEA, the FBI, the Marshals Service, the ATF, DHS, we are fighting every single day, all day long, to get rid of the scourge of individuals that are bringing fentanyl, cocaine, all the drugs that are coming into this country. And it was just a tremendous success, a sad day, because those drugs are in this country, but a tremendous success by the DEA and a great job, as the Attorney General said last week. This was a big arrest. We had the ATF.
I just saw a comment. The person said in the chat, they said, well, Trump was guilty, but Letitia James is not. What makes you think Trump was guilty? Okay, because he's rich. And of course, if you're rich, you are the bad guy. Okay. Now, Letitia James, no, she's innocent. She's innocent because what? Because her father didn't leave millions of dollars for her, because she doesn't have buildings with her name on it. So she's innocent. I don't know.
Taking dozens and dozens of guns off the hands of illegal immigrants that shouldn't have them. We have the FBI every day making arrests. We're working with our DHS partners 7 days a week, and we had a lot of work to do. And I'm really proud of our law enforcement partners every single day going out and doing exactly what every American should want them to do, which is keep our communities safe. And so when you see an arrest like what we saw with the DEA, it's a reflection of hard work, but it's also a reflection of what we have to do and the work that we have ahead of us. President Trump has been crystal clear that we have to get drugs off the streets of our communities, our big cities, our rural communities, and that's what we're doing, and that's what the DEA is doing. That's what all of our law enforcement partners are doing. I'm very proud to stand with them every day as they do what they're doing. And so this was we kept America safe by that arrest, but listen, the work is not done, and there's a lot of work left to do.
Todd, it's Tom Schiller. I want to get your take on this. Texas Senator John Cornyn says that the DOJ is opening an investigation into a Muslim-centric megacity being planned out for northern Texas. Cornyn says that, quote, religious discrimination and Sharia law has no place in his state. Todd, is the DOJ investigating this, and could the DOJ shut the city down?
Look, I will not comment on ongoing investigations. That wouldn't be appropriate. I agree with what the senator said as it relates to religious freedom and making sure that every citizen in this country feels safe. Look, I think that we've seen examples over the past several years of times where citizens of this country were not treated appropriately and not treated right, and every day, not only myself, but Attorney General Bondi, everybody that we work with, our full-time job is making sure that American citizens are safe. And so to the extent that there's challenges in Texas with what's happening there, of course we're going to take that very seriously. I'm not going to comment on any investigation that would not be appropriate, but rest assured that the Attorney General and I 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are doing everything we can to make sure that every citizen in this country feels safe and secure and has the right to not only express their views, protected by the First Amendment, but also feel like they can walk around their communities without any risk of violence or persecution coming against them.
Todd Blanche, you have a big job. We greatly appreciate your insights. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. Everybody's saying, well, Republicans, or well, they always say MAGA supporters don't care about the Constitution, or they don't care about this or that. So 77 million Americans don't care about the Constitution that voted for Trump. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what you mean by we don't care about the Constitution. All right. China and the United States deal is almost here. Check this out.
Welcome, Taylor. Let's see if we can put this in practical terms. Americans buy a lot of products made in China. China also has about 1 billion potential customers for U.S.-made goods. What do you think this deal will look like?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, so first of all, you heard there from Jameson Greer, a lot of this has been about resolving that $1.2 trillion deficit. The I here for me is about who needs who more. Remember, we import 5 times from China what they import from us. So a 145% tariff on them hurts them more than any tariff they place on us, because they don't buy stuff from us. We buy most of our stuff from them. So it's really about who needs who more and who's going to come to the negotiating table. I think the really good news, especially as we're thinking about the economy and the markets tomorrow, is that it looks like talks went well. I mean, we'll get a full briefing, I hear, Monday morning, but this is a very good starting point that at least there wasn't a massive blow up and talks went awry and everyone walked away from the table.
All right, let's put a particular face on this. Let's pick a company like Shein. It's an on-demand fashion giant with 90 million customers in the United States. And those customers were looking at a tariff in excess of 100%. What would be a good deal for their customers? Would it be half that, a quarter of that? What would be acceptable in terms of a tariff?
Yeah, you know, they obviously want no tariffs, but we as Americans and people who voted for President Trump want some sort of tariff. I think the president has floated a tariff of around 80%. So that's great. If you come from 150 to 80, that sounds a lot better than going from 0 to 80, right? I think the economy, the markets, the American people, look, this is where there's two sides to the sword, right? Where on one hand, an 80% tariff might still be a little bit harmful in that we might still be paying a little bit higher prices. But again, the question that people keep asking themselves, and look at what you're showing up there, right? People in manufacturing plants, right? Do I want another cheap sweatshirt from Shein? But if that means that my daughter doesn't have a job in Midwest 10 years from now, is that trade worth it? And a lot of Americans are thinking that trade isn't worth it anymore. We've done that for 20 years and we have gutted manufacturing because I wanted a couple cheap sweatshirts from China or cheap Barbie dolls or whatever it is, right? And so I think the question here for people is how much are you willing to pay in order to bring back some of that high precision manufacturing that Scott Bessent has talked about? And then what price is too high? Where Americans, at the end of the day, we are a consuming culture and we want to consume and we don't want to pay high prices for that. The president and his administration, they're trying to find that sweet spot.
All right, speaking of the sweet spot, he seems to have found it with Great Britain. Here he is on the deal reached with our ally.
The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved. So good for both countries. And by the way, we have many meetings planned today and tomorrow, and every country wants to be making deals.
All right. One adversary, one friend. How about neighbors like Mexico and Canada? Do you expect deals to be imminent with our neighbors?
You know, I do. I think people were really looking at the deal with the UK to see, is this a framework for larger deals to come? For me, that deal with the UK is all about the direction of travel. This shows that this is an administration that wants to make deals. They are willing to make trade deals with partners, and that we are able to do so relatively quickly. Remember, on average, any given trade deal takes 18 months. So if we're starting to get a framework already, albeit with the UK, where there wasn't a deficit, it was mostly neutral, if not we had a surplus. That's still good, though, and that it shows the direction of travel of this administration of wanting to start negotiating. I think the press conference with the new Canadian Prime Minister went well a few weeks ago. So I do expect there to be negotiations and a framework with our allies. I will say the economy and the markets are desperate for a trade deal with other Asian nations, South Korea, India, Japan. Anything that will further bring them closer to us and isolate China further puts pressure on China, which is the biggie, as you know.
All right, if I had on a hat, I would tip it to Scott Bessent, my fellow South Carolinian. He has had a busy week and may have more to come. Taylor Riggs, thank you for joining us on a Sunday night.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show.
Hello, everyone. I am Tom Shalhoub, along with Molly Line, Lydia Hu, and David Webb. And welcome to a special edition of the Big Weekend Show. Tonight's story. It's all about the art of the deal. The Trump administration has announced a trade deal has been reached with China. This comes after the president hailed the great progress made during yesterday and today's meetings in Switzerland. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer detailed the negotiations earlier today.
We made substantial progress between the United States and China in a very important trade.
Okay, here is the update. There is now this article here that says U.S.-China agrees to a 90-day pause. So no more tariff for 90 days. Check this out.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. First of all, we want to express our great thanks to the Swiss government for facilitating this trade meeting here in Geneva. We had very productive talks, and I believe that the venue here on Lake Geneva added great equanimity to what was a very positive process. We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moved down the tariff levels. Both sides on the reciprocal tariffs will move their tariffs down 115%. We had very robust discussions. Both sides showed great respect. It was a chance for me to meet the Chinese delegation. The vice premier I had previously had only a video call with. Ambassador Jamieson was familiar with two of the other leaders on the delegation from his previous time. So there was very good personal interaction. Both countries represented their national interests very well. We concluded that we have shared interest, and we both have an interest in balanced trade. The U.S. we'll continue moving towards that. I will let Ambassador Jameson talk about the President's initiatives that began on a historic announcement, trade announcement on January 20th, which no other president has ever done, following to April 2nd, when we implemented the reciprocal tariffs.
Thank you, Secretary, and I will echo your thanks to the Swiss government and Swiss officials for hosting us this weekend. The atmosphere was very conducive to discussions, and thanks to them we were able to have very constructive and positive conversations with our Chinese counterparts, who clearly came to deal this week. The rapid nature that we were able to conduct and conclude these discussions is a testament to mutual understanding and mutual respect between the Chinese and U.S. sides. With respect to the U.S. Trade position, our interactions with China, and the agreement today, please keep in mind that the United States trade deficit has ballooned over the past several years, ending up at $1.2 trillion deficit in goods as of the end of last year, which was an approximately 42% increase over a few years prior, when there was an $850 billion trade deficit at the beginning of the Biden administration. So that is a rapid and expansive increase in the trade deficit. And our view is that this is driven in large part by non-reciprocal trade, among other things, and the result has been offshoring of manufacturing and other negative impacts on the U.S. economy. And so on January 20th, when the president was inaugurated, he released the America First trade policy, which was comprehensive and flagged that he, and actually directed agencies, including U.S. Trade Representative and others, to research this issue and to provide options, which we did, and the president elected to impose reciprocal tariffs on April 2 to address this national emergency of the trade deficit. There was a global baseline tariff accompanied by higher reciprocal tariffs for each country depending on the level and intensity of their trade surplus with the United States. In all of this, China was assigned a reciprocal tariff rate of 34%. China was the only country that chose to implement retaliation against the United States for this reciprocal tariff. All other countries, withheld and decided that they wanted to negotiate with the United States or simply not retaliate. And so we've been in detailed discussions with other countries for several weeks at this point. China, as you know, retaliated not only with tariffs but with disproportionate and asymmetrical non-tariff measures in order to maintain the effectiveness of the reciprocal tariff measures. The president increased our tariff rates to offset Chinese retaliation. And as you know, this escalated to a point where both sides had added 125% tariffs, and with the Chinese side, additional non-tariff measures, amounting to an embargo in some senses on trade, an effective embargo, which of course was not a sustainable practice for either side. And so today, with this agreement, we come to agreement that our reciprocal tariff rate will go down to 10% on the United States side, so it goes down 115%. We enter into a 90-day pause period for negotiations, which both the Chinese and the United States are very committed to, and the Chinese on their side also go down 115% to 10%, and they remove other measures that the United States has put in place in the past, whether it's tariff measures from 2018 or since, tariffs under other statutory authorities, tariffs related to fentanyl. Those remain unchanged for now to the side. I'll just make one point, is that both the Chinese and the United States agreed to work constructively together on fentanyl, and there's a positive path forward there as well.
Okay, great. So let's start with some questions.
Well, just if I may make a few final remarks to give you framing and context. I think throughout the trade process, we have had a plan, we have a process in place, and now with the Chinese, after this weekend, we have a mechanism for continued talks. So process, plan, and mechanism. I would say one of the big takeaways from this weekend, the United States will continue a strategic rebalancing in many areas that were exposed as supply chain weaknesses during COVID, whether it's medicines, whether it's semiconductors, steel, we've identified 5 or 6 strategic industries and supply chain vulnerabilities, and we will continue moving toward U.S. independence or reliable supplies from allies on those. But the consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling. And what had occurred with these very high tariffs, as Ambassador Greer said, was the equivalent of an embargo, and neither side wants that. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that. We would like to see China open to more U.S. goods. We expect that as the negotiations proceed, that there will also be a possibility of purchase agreements to pull what is our largest bilateral trade deficit into balance that has gotten out of balance. And much of this has happened through neglect over the past 4 years, as the previous administration did not engage on this issue. That was put forward to us by the Chinese, in fact, and we can see it in what happened to the Phase 1 agreement. We are only looking forward, and we look forward to very good discussions now that we have the mechanism created in Geneva this weekend for talks.
Great. And with that, let's kick off questions. I'll start in the front row. Jenny, Leonard Bloomberg.
Thank you so much. Going into these talks, the president posted on Truth Social that he believes an 80% tariff on China seems right. It obviously went down substantially more. How did you end up going to 30%? Was that the president pushing you, or the Chinese not budging before you went down? And then secondly, you have a 90-day pause now, as you have with other countries. What specifically do you want to see in those 90 days? What kind of progress do you want to see in those 90 days and have agreed to by then to not ratchet up the tariffs? Because it is just a pause, right?
Yes, so
the tariffs then snap back, basically, if you don't have something agreed upon that is substantive.
So the Chinese April 2nd number was 34, continues to be 34%. I'll let Ambassador Greer answer the first question. And just like with all our other trading partners, as long as there is good faith effort, engagement, and constructive dialogue, then we will keep moving forward.
I would just say, Jenny, with respect to, the president's message and ultimate rates, I mean, everything is a negotiation, right? And the president, he gives the Secretary of the Treasury and I and other members of the cabinet direction and advice on how to proceed. And we ended up at a result that is very good for the United States, very good for China as well. We retain our 10% global baseline tariff, which we have on other countries. We have, in addition to that, previous measures that we've retained, which have been, frankly, effective in reducing the U.S. bilateral trade deficit with China over the past few years. So that leaves us in a very good position all in with respect to measures on Chinese imports, but more importantly, leaves us in a constructive path forward to have a positive conversation with the Chinese on how to rebalance and have more constructive trade.
Great. in the back, Associated Press.
Associated Press. Hi, I'm Jamie from Associated Press. We just heard our colleague talk about 30% tariffs. I'm just trying to understand these numbers here because they're all over the place. We were at 145 before, apparently, and 125, I believe, from the Chinese side. So can you say clearly now that, I think the question was, right now for the 90-day period, the U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods will be down to 30%? Is that correct? So 30%?
So again, this agreement is really about the reciprocal tariff, which was imposed by the United States on April 2nd, and the escalatory steps which followed. Those on each side, the Chinese side and U.S. side, ended up at 125% on each other. The Chinese had additional non-tariff countermeasures. That has all come down by 115% to 10% each. The United States earlier this year imposed 20% related to fentanyl. That still exists. So if you're looking at Trump Term 2, tariffs on China, right now effective, it's 30%. There are prior measures which change by product, by sector, by level, etc. You can't really give a specific number on that right now. What matters for the agreement today is that we each agreed to come down on the reciprocal tariff and related retaliation to 10%. So a reduction of 115% down to 10%. Fentanyl is on its own track, but on a very positive track where we're having very constructive conversations with our Chinese counterparts.
And I would add a couple of things. This does not include any sector-specific tariffs that have been put across all of our trading partners. And as the ambassador said, I think he would agree with me that the upside surprise for me from this weekend was the level of Chinese engagement on the fentanyl crisis in the United States. They brought the Deputy Minister for Public Safety, who is not traditionally part of the trade team or the negotiating team, and he had a very robust and highly detailed discussion with someone from the U.S. National Security Team.
Great. Next, John Huddy with Newsmax.
Mr. Secretary, will there be any immediate impact that U.S. consumers will see from this? And what was the toughest part of the talks? The Chinese are, notorious for being very difficult negotiators. Was there any moment that you felt the talks could break down? And as far as the fentanyl, I'm sorry, I know there's 3 questions here, but what are the Chinese willing to do in terms of the fentanyl crisis? Did they make any promises or any agreements to combat fentanyl?
Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me recap that. So you're asking U.S. consumers, the last one was fentanyl, and what was the second question?
The toughest part of the negotiation.
Well, I'll start there first. Both sides represented their national interest well, but we also concluded that we had shared interest and that neither side was interested in a decoupling. And again, a lot of back and forth on various differences in views on fair trade. We informed them, I had a discussion that trade deficits are a result of 3 things. 1, terms of trade, 2, currency, and then 3, the United States fiscal position. We informed them that Trump administration is working very hard on containing this out-of-control fiscal deficit that we inherited from the previous administration. 2, there was no discussion on currency. And 1, it was on terms of trade. And on fentanyl, again, for the first time, there was engagement between 2 teams with detailed knowledge. And I think for the first time, the Chinese understood the magnitude of what is happening in the U.S. In 2018 in Buenos Aires. They did a good job of banning the actual fentanyl. But what we have seen is substantial interaction between bad Chinese actors and many North American drug dealers, especially Mexican cartels. Treasury has designated several of the Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. We made that clear to the Chinese. They were very receptive. As you may or may not know, the Chinese have very draconian measures for the sale of illicit narcotics in China, and we have asked them to be equally as draconian with the people who are poisoning Americans.
And let me make a point. Your question about what was the toughest part of the negotiation, I would submit it was actually, in the lead up to the negotiation, trying to repair channels of communication that had atrophied under the last administration, where, our office, for example, the Office of the United States Trade Representative, had almost no substantive discussions with the Chinese side on trade. And although we have significant differences with the Chinese on trade and economics, and we have major complaints, you have to discuss these complaints. You have to have a channel for discussions, and overcoming that was a substantial challenge. And a lot of work went into that over the past several weeks, so that by the time we got here, we were able to be very pragmatic with each other. And to be sure, there were tough things to deal with on the level of removal, the timing for implementation, managing each side's domestic politics, etc. And I won't go into too much detail. But I would say the toughest part was simply getting to a position where we could, in good faith, both sides work with each other. And once we did, we were able to do this in a couple of days. This is not the first time I've done trade negotiations with the Chinese, and sometimes it can take a very, very long time to overcome misunderstandings. We were able to do that effectively over the past few weeks, which enabled us to be very pragmatic and effective this weekend.
And I think we leave with a very good mechanism to avoid the unfortunate escalations as we saw after April 2nd from happening again. What had been very unusual about the relationship was that President Trump, Party Chairman Xi, they have a good relationship, but that the nature of what has happened since April 2nd could have been avoided if we had had this kind of mechanism in place, and I believe it is in place now. I think we leave today with a process that will move forward, and again, great mutual respect for our Chinese counterparts. I believe they showed us the same.
And the impact on U.S. consumers? Will U.S. consumers see any resulting
I mean, Mr. You're the Treasury Secretary, so you're better suited. But I would say on the front end, there's been a lot of talk about impact on consumers that just never really translates to the numbers. Consumption remained high, et cetera. And so I think what we're going to see is that we're going to have our economy continue taking off as we put structure around these negotiations and get global trade into a better place.
And as I reiterated last week, the Trump economic plan is three pieces: trade, tax, and deregulation. Trade has been implemented first, and that process is occurring. We believe that the tax portion is going very well. Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, who I am in constant contact with, believe that midsummer that we will pass, as the president likes to call it, his one big beautiful bill, and we believe that that will provide substantial relief for American households. And then deregulation, a hidden and pernicious tax on American households is regulation. We believe that the last administration added several $1,000s a year to American families' cost, and that we will be not only cutting those rolling that back, but cutting those substantially.
Thanks. I think we have time for about maybe 2 or 3 more questions. The most, sorry, ma'am, name and outlet, please.
Yeah, it's Imogen Folks, BBC. It's very heartening what you're telling us. I'm wondering whether you think it might have been a better idea to start at this point of negotiation rather than start with a big list of tariffs and all the global turmoil that caused and the fear, frankly, in some countries around the world. How about, do you think in hindsight might have been better to start, reach out and say we want to talk to you guys about this?
No, I disagree entirely. We have spent decades at the World Trade Organization in multilateral and bilateral negotiations trying to get other countries to reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers to be more reciprocal with the U.S. We've had one of the most open economies for decades. The promise of the WTO and the multilateral system is that everyone was going to come down. It turns out the U.S. went down significantly. There were other economies that had low tariffs as well, but retained very high non-tariff barriers. We have tried really hard to work within the system, and the net result is a $1.2 trillion deficit in goods. The net result is manufacturing went to China, East Asia, Mexico, etc. So we tried all of that. So the idea that we can just keep saying, well, why don't we just talk a little bit more and we'll have a different outcome, I think just is totally detached from reality.
And I would add a couple of things, that as our 18 important trading partners come to us, many with very good deals, as the UK, who skipped to the front of the line as our oldest ally, as Ambassador Greer and I look at their proposals, again, to lower tariffs, to lower the non-tariff trade barriers. Obviously, UK does not have a currency manipulation problem. And the subsidies for labor and industry, we look at these and I think, how did we get here? How did we get here? And I echo part of what President Trump said, that he doesn't blame the other economies for taking advantage of a fluid, taking advantage of the situation when they were allowed to do it. He blames previous U.S. leaders. So we are just trying to restore a healthy equilibrium. That the U.S. economy has become very unbalanced. On one side, we have a forward-leaning, the deepest and widest financial markets in the world. We have financial innovation. We have the tech sector that is the envy in the world. On the other side, we are a natural resources economy led by energy. So it is a barbell. But in between, precision manufacturing, especially precision manufacturing, has been wiped out. And it is our intent to bring that back. So we want to rebalance. And I think that there is a big opportunity. If I think about this weekend, the Chinese, they have gone the other way. They are unbalanced in terms of overproduction in the manufacturing sector. They have stated, but have not yet rebalanced toward a more consumption-oriented economy. And there is a chance, if we can open up trade to China, have more fair trade toward the U.S., that we could rebalance together. So I reject the notion that business as usual would have worked.
Great, and I think this will be our last question as we're just about out of time. Swiss outlet, Urs Gehringer with Dearborn Walsh.
Yes, I have a question in regard of the setting of these very successful talks as we hear. Switzerland has been in the center for international conferences for many decades. In recent times, we've been under tremendous pressure. The ambassador of Joe Biden to Switzerland called Switzerland the hole in the donut. My question is, how high does your administration value reliable Swiss neutrality 4 conferences or meetings as we just witnessed this weekend?
Well, I won't speak for the previous ambassador. My neighbor in Charleston, South Carolina, is the ambassador under President Trump, Ambassador Ed McMullen, who was highly respected here. He continues to engage with the Swiss American Foundation, and he has led this administration's effort to re-engage with Switzerland after the past 4 years. So we value the relationship. I believe Switzerland is now one of maybe the 6th largest investor in the U.S., which is incredible for an economy with 9 million people. We hope that Switzerland will bring some of its very robust trade training programs to the U.S. as we re-engage the manufacturing sector, because I believe the U.S. has a lot to learn from Switzerland. And again, the UK and Switzerland have moved to the front of the queue for the trade deals, whereas the EU has been much slower. So we value that also.
And I would say, with respect to the negotiating dynamics, and this may not seem important to those not involved in this, but the atmospherics provided by the Swiss government were incredibly conducive to the conclusions we had this weekend. They allowed us to use the grounds of the residence of the Swiss ambassador to the United Nations, which had a very intimate internal rooms, and importantly for us, where a lot of the key negotiations happened, were outside under a large, beautiful tree on a set of patio sofas, frankly, where we had the most important discussions on the most challenging issues. And having this setting, as opposed to, no offense to the Intercontinental, which has been great, as opposed to a sterile hotel conference situation or conference rooms, I think let us develop a personal relationship with our counterparts and lead to the successful conclusion we had.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. I think that's it for us in time today. Thank you so much for coming out. And
What do you guys think about this trade deal between China and the United States? Do you think this is going to come out nice for both parties? It is a 90-day pause for sure. Nothing decisive yet. However, it's looking like the news is almost here. All right, Iran. Trump has been talking about denuclearizing Iran. Here we go. Here we go.
Now, Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz, who sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, welcome back. Let's pick it up there. What would you like to see from these talks with Iran?
Well, thanks, Shannon, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Well, look, what I would like to see actually is a little tougher language coming out of the Trump administration. I'm to the right of this issue to the J.D. Vance-Witkoff approach, and I agree, quite frankly, more with Senator Lindsey Graham and probably Senator Tom Cotton. Iran is the weakest they've been in a period of time. Now is not the time to appease them. Now is the time to put maximum pressure on them and make sure that we dismantle the nuclear program. I'm not saying we should start bombing the facility, but I'm saying all options should be on the table, right? That is the Trump language. And so I just believe we have to make sure that there's a dismantling of the nuclear facility one way or another.
Listen, we like on Fox News Sunday that we're bringing together bipartisan agreement. Jared Moskowitz, Tom Cotton. Listen, if you have some moment of agreement, we're happy to facilitate that. But let's stay there. You said all options on the table. What are your concerns with if Israel decides to move forward with a strike, what the U.S. role should or shouldn't be, talking about on those facilities within Iran?
Well, look, I don't know if Israel will move without the United States. But that being said, look, we have precedent over the last couple of years that, if Israel makes an offensive action, the United States pledges to defend Israel. And so if that's what the Trump doctrine is on that, I think that would be satisfactory, that if Israel decides to go make a strike, that the United States will pledge to defend Israel from any Iranian response. But look, I want to see if we can do this peacefully, right? President Trump has the capability, we've seen it many times before, right now to put maximum pressure on Iran, use that tough language, and see if we can get the dismantling of those nuclear facilities. If not, I'd like to see President Trump say that he will dismantle it one way or another. Let the Iranians know, again, all options are on the table.
Okay, as you said, he says he wants diplomacy, but again, everything is on the table. I want to ask you about something else that's got your party in the headlines this weekend, which is the incident at the ICE facility in New Jersey on.
Oh my God. Whew. OG 45th and 47th President of the United States. He just posted on Truth Social, he says, drug prices to be cut by 59%. Plus gasoline, energy, groceries, and all other costs. Down, no inflation. Love, DJT. I'm telling you, man, this week is about to be fire. This week is about to be news on news, deals on deals, trade on deals. Man, put some respect on Trump name, yo.
DHS says that they've got body cam footage. They've shared with us. They say several people, including elected officials, broke into a federal facility that's operating lawfully. Here's their side of the story. They say members of Congress storming into a detention facility goes beyond a bizarre political stunt and puts the safety of our law enforcement agents and detainees at risk. Members of Congress are not above the law and cannot illegally break into detention facilities. DHS says the worst of the worst, according to them, are housed there: murderers, rapists, child predators, gang members. Is this a good look for your party?
Well, let me say this. That statement is not true, not accurate. What happened is that every member of Congress has the ability to go and tour of an ICE facility. And in fact, they went on the tour. They were allowed in. They toured the whole facility. That's why you saw statements of them saying, actually, the facility was in good shape. The folks there seemed to be doing okay. So they were allowed in. They got a tour. And then somebody made a decision on the way out. Someone in Homeland made a decision on the way out to do this. First of all, one of these members is 80 years old. So this language, this January 6th language that was specifically used by Homeland, they stormed the facility. That's a lie. They were invited in to tour the facility. And then on the way out, something happened where they decided to go and arrest the mayor of Newark. By the way, they did this with people who were not badged, who covered their face as if they were on some sort of ICE raid with criminals. Not the mayor and not 3 congressmen. So I got to be honest, I think someone at Homeland decided to set them up as they were exiting the facility. With the deep state, remember, that still exists, right?
Okay, well, what DHS is saying is that there was a bus of detainees coming in through a gate. Again, this is DHS's account of it, and that some of these folks forced their way into that bus where the bus was coming in through the fencing and then got to a security checkpoint. As for the mayor, who is running for governor, by the way, he apparently had been out there protesting for days. At one point, it showed up with a bulldozer. So clearly there are a lot of conflicting conversations, optics, accounts of what happened there. This is the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons. He says his personnel was put in danger because of this. Here's his take.
You didn't see anyone out there having those type of protests under the last administration. There's almost 1.8 million people incarcerated in the United States. If they think there's such a problem with the prison system, where are they out there protesting for their constituents that are being held for crimes in American prisons, right?
So what was this about?
Well, look, for me personally, I've been very tough on the criminals that are here illegally, right? They should be removed from the country. So I don't disagree with what Mr. Lyons is saying when it comes to criminals who are here illegally. But he is diverting attention from what happened at that ICE facility. To be clear, one of those members is 80 years old. It is a lie that they stormed the facility. That language was used specifically, and it's not true. They actually toured the whole facility. You can't storm a facility that ICE said, come in and look around. Do your oversight, which they're federally allowed to do. And then why would you need 15 masked people to go and deal with the mayor of Newark and 3 congressmen? So this doesn't look right. I think it looks bad, quite frankly, for Homeland. There's a lot of questionable things going on at Homeland recently, including the firing of the FEMA administrator right before hurricane season. And so, look, you know, this is unfortunate. And if this continues to happen, where members of Congress are going to be attacked, physically attacked by the administration, this is going to have reverberations on whether the House can function.
Okay, well, everyone is presumed innocent with the charges that they may be facing or that are coming, and so we'll track it and try to get more of that story. I think it's interesting that we have such conflicting accounts of exactly what went down. Let me ask you about this. You, back home in Florida, my home state, you have been taking some heat from the more progressive wing of your party, most recently for not showing up for this town hall that they had put together. One of the organizers said this: "We worked hard to get him elected, and now he's not answering questions." They say the crowd then booed, then somebody yelled primary him, then there was applause. Are you, like many of your party, kind of caught in the middle between the old and the new guard, the progressive wings? Do you feel like the party has coalesced about who's leading it and how you move forward?
Yeah, so first on that town hall, it wasn't my town hall. It was a town hall the special interest group put on, and they invited all 3 Congress people from the area, and none of them came. So it wasn't that I just didn't show up. No one showed up from Congress. You know, that being said, my district is a D+2 district. It's a moderate district. I'm a moderate. I'm not a progressive. I've never said I was a progressive. I have democratic values. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I have fought for those values, and I will continue to do so in Congress. But Democrats have to, like, get one thing straight. We need to win. This purity thing that we want to go through, that's great if we want to continue to be in the minority. But if we want to win, we got to put people in seats that can win those seats. We got Democrats in Trump seats. You can't run progressives there. We'll lose those seats. And so, look, we have a big tent. There's room for all of these ideas in our party. But if we're going to make Hakeem Jeffries the speaker, it's going to run through districts like mine and 20 others where moderate Dems have to win. Progressives can't win there.
Well, 2016 already in full campaign mode. That is always fair to say. And thank you for your time. We appreciate it, Congressman.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Y'all want to keep going or y'all want to call it a day? It is currently 7:09 a.m. It is Monday. How are you doing? What is your plan for today? What's up? What's up, everybody? Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Yes. Y'all want to keep going? Let me go check the chat. Or all right, with that being said, thank you for tuning into the live show. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. All right? Maximum pressure on Iran, for sure, definitely. I mean, Iran is known to escalate stuff really fast. So having a nuclear weapon for Iran, I don't know. Okay, that's not even something that is feasible to any American or for any American. Matter of fact, if you're in the Western world and you hear Iran or Afghanistan or Iraq having like nuclear weapon, your brain is like, whoa, what in the world going on here? But hopefully that gets sorted out. And the China-United States deal, I cannot wait for it to be fully concluded. And, you know, let's know exactly where we're heading towards for the next 2 years, 3 years. But I believe in the United States, to support the president. I voted for Trump. So, you know, he's not going to get everything right. He's never going to get everything right. Okay. He is a human being. He will make mistakes. His administration will make mistakes. It's just what it is. He's not going to get everything 100%. But even if he gets it to be 65, 75%, that's all you need, really. Make sure the border is secured, which is almost already done. Trade deals, that is the most important thing for Trump's administration, and also ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. And of course, if you check out India and Pakistan, the fact that Trump actually got involved and then he said, you guys have to de-escalate, okay? That's just commendable. If it was Sleepy Joe, it would have been, we know where India and Pakistan would have been by now. It probably would have gone on for the next 2 years, just like Russia and Ukraine been going on since like 2022. So a leader that actually knows how to be a diplomat, that can converse, that can talk to both parties, and is not on his high horse and saying that, well, Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. There's no way I'm going to call him. You want to end the war, you have to talk to both parties. Well, Vladimir Putin started the war. He's a war criminal. I'm not talking to him. We're going to send munitions to Ukraine. For what? Thousands of people are going to heaven. Some are going to hell. Who knows? Okay. The fact is, now there's a leader in the White House who actually is a diplomat, who does not want war, who wants low prices. Y'all can say he wants to cut prices. He wants to cut taxes on the rich. The rich employs poor. That's how it goes. Okay. You can hate the rich, whatever you want to say. Oh, they evade taxes. They know how to write off stuff. Yes, because they employ the poor. All right. So without the rich, the poor don't have a job. And you could talk about, well, tax the rich. You ain't got no job, bro. And you taxing the rich is definitely taxing the poor. Only uneducated individual would tell you, well, tax the rich. When you tax the rich, how do you actually tax the rich? How? When most of them, all of their income, most of their asset is in the stock market, is in real estate. Those guys write off almost every single thing. So how do you actually tax the rich? Honey, you ain't taxing the rich like that because they know how to figure it out through the tax codes to their advantage. And then you're there screaming, tax the rich. What do you mean by tax the rich? Oh, tax the rich. Jeff Bezos, you're talking about tax Jeff Bezos, tax Elon Musk. Those guys have almost all of their wealth in their stocks. Almost everything Elon Musk has is in Tesla stocks. So what? Task Tesla stocks? No, it's impossible. They know how to get it over with. But the broke, the poor, you don't know. So before you even get paid, they already got your taxes off of that. You already paid taxes before you got paid, baby. So you're not even fighting the right fight. Tax the rich. No, baby. That's not how it goes. But I'll let, tax the rich people go continue. That's what the Democrat sells to people who look like me. Tax the rich. Tax the rich. Oh, they got so much money. Tax the rich. Tax the rich? You're literally doing yourself a disservice. But y'all want to keep going? Let's keep going, man. Let's keep going. He better get these deals done. Something I'm going to tell you. Trump better get all these deals done. He better make sure it gets done in a timely manner before shelves start getting empty, because everybody's talking like there would be no repercussions. There will be repercussions. I support Trump, but if he doesn't get these deals done really fast, like I'm saying, like this week, especially with China, and I'm glad this 90-day pause is already in fruition. That way, ships can come into the United States. I'm sure they already started moving because they just said in Los Angeles the last ship before Liberation Day just landed in the port. So I don't know, man. They better get these deals done ASAP. All right, Lara Trump.
Back to my view. Well, we love getting your questions each week, and sometimes we're inspired to get the answers straight from the source. Jane asked, what is the RNC doing now to be certain the election is fair in 2028? Did you leave a roadmap for their success? Jane, I have to tell you, you are not the first person to ask me this question. I think the number one concern I heard during my time as RNC co-chair was that people weren't sure they could trust our elections. That is so sad because our country relies on having free, fair, and transparent elections. Now, I do think we restored some much needed confidence in our elections in 2024, but we certainly can't take our foot off the gas. What we learned in 2024 that worked was being on offense, not defense. We were proactive in seeking out areas prior to the first vote ever being cast that were concerning. Like, for example, voter rolls being cleaned or ensuring we had the same number of Republican poll workers as Democrat poll workers. And when we found an issue like that, we addressed it. We also ensured that every time a vote was cast and counted, we had eyes in the room for full transparency. And that required an enormous volunteer effort of 230,000 people all over the country. I have full confidence in Chairman Michael Whatley to continue our efforts well into 2026 and 2028. But I figured I'd let him tell you for himself. It's so funny because a year ago, right now, you and I had just become chair and co-chair of the RNC. It felt like we almost had an insurmountable task in front of us. Now that we're about 4 months into the president's second term in office, reflect on the past year for me.
It's been amazing at every single level. Right when the president was becoming the formal nominee, and we knew that we needed to completely retool the RNC. We needed to make sure that it was going to be, a committee dedicated to working with the president's campaign, which had not really ever been done before. We knew that we were fighting history. We were going to make the biggest political comeback ever, but the RNC needed to be remodeled. I'll never forget, I had a conversation with him the day after the debate that he had with Joe Biden, and I said, sir, you really do have the opportunity here to have, honestly, the most transformational term since Ronald Reagan's first term. And the night that they announced that he was the winner, right, election night, and he looked at me and he said, Michael, we got that opportunity. Let's take advantage of it.
I found a photo the other day, and it is at 5:30 in the morning on the tarmac at PBI. We had just come back. It was November 5th.
Yep.
An entire crazy day of campaigning. That picture encapsulates what this entire campaign was. None of us really knew what was about to happen several hours later.
I've never seen a harder working campaign. I've never been around better people. So, I was not surprised when we won. It's very gratifying to help shape history for the better. And I think that America and the world are going to be better for it.
We saw such a surge of young voters coming over and voting for President Trump. How do we keep them in this party and make sure that they're going to vote in 26, 28 and beyond?
We're going to rebuild our economy. It's going to work for every community and every family. We're going to restore the southern border. We're going to keep our kids and our communities safe.
Work.
These are things that really, truly mattered to every generation. But the fact that he was able to turn around, take that core message, and deliver it through the podcasts was really, truly remarkable. And all of a sudden, it was the cool campaign. And those votes really truly matter because now that you have 18-year-olds, they're going to be there when they're 24. They're going to be there when they're 28. And that really does give us an opportunity to kind of build that coalition for the long term.
Maybe give me your sense as chairman of the difference right now between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party.
The Republican Party is talking to the voters, and we're talking to them about the issues that they care about. Think about family. Think about community. Right now, the Democratic Party is in free fall. Right? They absolutely are rudderless. They're leaderless. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they were terrible messengers, but they had a terrible message, and they are really the party right now of inflationary spending, waste, fraud, and abuse, open borders, and a weak America. All they're doing is doubling down on the same failed agenda that they just ran on. These things are absolutely indefensible, and yet here they are fighting harder for that than they are their constituents.
I think 2024 marked the first time for a lot of people that they felt like they could trust our electoral process. I think that was so big.
It's get out the vote, protect the ballot, over and over and over again before voting started. We needed to make sure that we were in the room with attorneys and volunteers and poll workers anytime a vote was cast or counted. And then we needed to communicate that, right? We needed everybody to understand that their vote was going to be protected. On the flip side was that if you cheat or you help somebody else cheat, then we are going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. It really did make a tremendous difference in terms of the outcome on Election Day.
And going forward, looking at 2026, looking at 2028, are you guys going to have an operation like that here as well?
Absolutely. That needs to be a bedrock foundation of the RNC going forward. The 4 key principles that we see are that only American citizens can vote. You have to have voter ID. States need to clean up their voter roll, and you want basic protections for mail-in ballots. The Democrats are fighting us on all of those. The American people want them. We're going to keep this program up and running, and it's going to be a critical part of everything we do going forward.
What is it you're taking from 2024, from that election, as you're looking at the midterms, and maybe talk about some of the, red states that might feel a little uncomfortable and the blue states that we think we have a better chance in for Republicans?
I feel like we've got a very real opportunity here, right? So the Senate map feels pretty good. We've got, tough holds in Maine and North Carolina and Kentucky. We've got great pickup opportunities in places like New Hampshire and Georgia and Michigan. The House, it's too close. Right? We have a 5-seat majority in the House. We need a better majority to be able to work with the president and his team on the legislative agenda going forward. Speaker Johnson and Senator Thune are doing fantastic jobs with the narrow margins that they have, but we need to be able to expand it.
And though the RNC is looking forward, there are still some traces of the past. If we keep walking down this way, I thought maybe you'd gotten rid of all remnants of me around here, but it's not true.
Nope, not at all.
Because here we are, up on the wall. There it is. Kept me around.
Yeah, this place does really well when we have a lot of people. We had probably 90% of our staff that went into the camp, into the White House or into the administration. So we're rebuilding, but we've got a really, really good core team already put together. What we want to do is make sure that we are seamless. With the president, we're here to support his agenda. We're here to support his candidates. Obviously, we want to win in the midterms. That's going to be absolutely essential for it.
And while 2028 may seem an eternity away, I had to ask the question on everybody's mind. I think a lot of people turn immediately to 2028 and they say, well, what happens when Donald Trump isn't even involved anymore?
We are the party of the working class. We are the party for every family, for every community. We're the common sense party. We're in a position now where we can have other candidates. And you think about our bench. You look at all of the people that we have, from the vice president to the cabinet members to governors to members of the Senate and members of Congress. We've got amazing candidates and potential, for 2028, 2020, 2032 and 2036. Donald Trump remade the Republican Party in what has the potential to really be a long-term party, as long as we listen to the voters.
Well, Michael Whatley, thanks for taking a little time for us. Thanks for all you do and all you've done, and we appreciate it all.
Shout out to the RNC, Lara Trump. The fact that she literally just moved away from politics in some way, shape, or form, and now she's going into podcasting, newscasting, journalism. I like that. I really like that.
We begin tonight with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
We just see this? Okay, let's check out the House.
Of 100 days of Donald Trump as the 47th president. So give me an idea of some of the things the House has done to try and push forward the Trump agenda, because you guys have been working hard.
We have been working hard, trying to keep up with the president. The reconciliation package, of course, is a big part of that. And that will be the vehicle where we deliver most of the America First agenda. So a lot of work's gone into this. We've been working on that package for over a year in anticipation of this moment, because we knew he was going to win another term and that we would have unified government with Republicans in charge of the White House, the Senate, and the House. We cannot waste this opportunity. So there's not been a lot of rest around here.
To have the White House, to have the House, and to have the Senate.
Exactly.
It's only happened 4 times for Republicans in the past century.
Yeah.
So how are you capitalizing on this moment? Because this is a very big deal.
So we have very small margins. We have majorities in the House and the Senate, but very small. So we have to use that efficiently and effectively. And reconciliation is the process that you can do in a partisan fashion. You can put all of your Republican conservative priorities in one bill because you frankly don't need the Democrats to come along. And you might have noticed they're in no mood to help us out. And it's really sad because the country needs the parties to work together and restore common sense. And that's what the Trump administration has been about.
You've been Speaker under a President Joe Biden and now under a President Donald Trump. Give me the breakdown of being Speaker under each of these different presidents.
It's like being on 2 different planets, honestly.
Wow.
I mean, President Biden now infamously, everyone knows, he frankly was not in charge towards the end of his administration. The 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration put the country in such a terrible position. I mean, every metric of public policy was a disaster under that lack of leadership. So here comes President Trump. He comes in hot because he was ready to serve and ready to deliver and had great ideas in all these areas. But we had to make these major adjustments. We had to fix the country.
You have the Democrats on the other side who, you often see here at the Capitol, folks reaching across the aisle to try to work with one another.
Yeah.
How's that been going for you guys?
Not so great this term. I mean, they were not in any mood. And that's because it has less to do with us, more to do with them. I mean, their party's in total disarray. They're having an internal civil war right now. They have no identifiable leader. Their entire agenda has been totally repudiated by the American people. And so they really don't know where to turn. All they can do is fight back, right? And it looks like obstruction because it is. And it doesn't matter what President Trump proposes or what we propose, they're going to be against it. And it's frustrating. We would love to work with some reasonable, sensible Democrats, but there's so few of them seemingly at this moment that want to do that.
Talk about the importance of the unity of the Republican Party as we head towards those midterms, because I think it is in stark contrast to where the Democrats are.
It is, and that's a really important contrast. The House and Senate Republicans working together seamlessly as a team. That's a real innovation. That hasn't happened very often in history. We know that that's important because the margins are so small. So we stay unified. We go into this midterm election. We can grow the majority in the House and the Senate. And my focus is the House, of course. Now, there's only 2 times in the last 90 years that a sitting president has picked up seats for his party in that first 2-year cycle after he's elected. A lot of reasons for that. But Donald J. Trump is going to make history in this way, and we are as well.
There are a lot of voices in the Republican Party. Tell me a little bit about how you navigate those waters.
Well, we have a joke around here. I'm not really Speaker of the House. I'm a mental health counselor. Look, I love all of my colleagues, genuinely. I know how they think, I know what makes them tick, and I know the dynamics of their districts. They see the same set of problems, same philosophy, but a different set of lenses on how to solve it. So the job of the Speaker and the whip and our leadership team, our majority leader, is to draw everybody together and try to find consensus so we can solve the problems. And so far, so good. Sometimes it's good to be underestimated as a leader, and at the end of the day, we give God the glory for the victories.
Well, shortly after you became Speaker, your 2 sons were out swimming and nearly drowned. I wonder if you might take us through that story, because I think that was probably a bit of a life-altering moment for you.
Yeah, it was a difficult time for us, but it was about a month or so after I was elected Speaker in 2023. It was in November. Vividly remember the time frame because it was the Thanksgiving break for my boys. And at the time, I had a senior in high school, Jack, and Will, my middle school son. And they went with me on the trip to Mar-a-Lago, went down there to start raising money for the election for all my colleagues. My boys were out on the beach. They got caught in a riptide and pulled far out to sea in the Atlantic. They're great swimmers, great athletes, but this was more than they could handle. My older son went under to hold his younger brother up. He almost lost his life. Both of them almost drowned. And the only reason they were saved is because a parasailor happened to be going by and see my 14, 13-year-old son at the time, his head crying out for help. They're fine. No permanent damage, but a big scare. And as soon as we were home, phone rang. It was the president. And I'd not told him about it, but he called and he said, Mike, I can't believe, I heard what happened. He said, that's a miracle. I don't believe in luck or coincidence. I know that God saved my sons. And we talked about how that was kind of a miraculous thing. Well, fast forward to the first shooting event in Butler, Pennsylvania. I spoke to President Trump shortly after that, and I reminded him of that miraculous event with my sons down in Florida. And I said, sir, just as God saved my boys, he saved you as well. And that's not luck or coincidence, that's providence.
That's amazing. And, you know, I think one of the things that is very known about you is how important your faith is to you. And I read a story about a miracle, speaking of miracles, that happened with your own father when you were younger that maybe contributed to how impactful faith has been in your life.
Yeah, it happened when I was 12 years old. My father was a firefighter, and he was caught in an explosion on the job, on duty, and burned 80% of his body, third-degree burns. He had about a 5% chance to live. Wow. It's a long story, a miraculous story, from how he was saved from the fire itself to how he recovered thereafter. But I learned very young at that age that faith was very real. You know, it stuck with me my whole life, and it's a big part of what I do here every day.
And had God not intervened, Speaker Johnson's journey may have turned out very differently.
I heard that one time, had you not gotten into politics, maybe you would have been a firefighter. Is that true?
Yeah, that was my aspiration. I wanted to be the chief of the Shreveport Fire Department in Louisiana, my hometown.
Wow.
But when my dad got burned in the explosion, I was 12, the oldest of 4 kids, and they weren't so enamored with that idea. So I went to school instead and wound up here.
Did you ever think that you'd be Speaker of the House and that you'd be able to look out on your balcony like this?
No, never considered it, never aspired to it. I guess I don't grip the gavel as tightly as some previous occupants of the office did, because it wasn't ever on my bucket list, you know. But that allows me to do what I think is the right thing, you know, and let the chips fall where they may. And turns out that's a good formula for right now.
Guided by that formula and his faith, Speaker Johnson is moving full speed ahead.
We have big consequential legislation that has to get through Congress. And so we're going to count on the better angels of our colleagues to get this through. And I work every day on trying to build consensus, not just among Republicans, but among everybody here, because that's the job of the Speaker of the House. Even in divided times, we have to maintain that focus, and we'll continue to try to do that every single day. I believe God's given us a chance to save the country. We take that responsibility very seriously. But I'm excited about where we're headed. We're almost 250 years into this grand experiment in self-governance. But we know what it'll take to keep it. And I think we have a chance to do that, to save this republic. And President Trump is exactly the right leader at the right time to get that done.
Speaker Johnson, thanks for spending a little time with us. And
Speaker Johnson, for sure, extremely skillful with his communication. You could tell. I don't think he's going to pass for a presidential candidate, but he's definitely a managerial position person. He knows how to manage with the way he just conducts himself. And being the Speaker of the House, definitely the wins that he's commanded, you definitely give him his flowers, for sure. Give him his flowers. Speaker Mike Johnson. Shout out to Speaker Mike Johnson. All right. Of course, they're dragging this back and forth.
We want to bring in attorney and American Frontier Strategy CEO Mahek Cook. Mahek, listen, this seems to be cut and dry. If you look at it from one perspective, it's an ICE facility. You could make a phone call in advance when you're a congressperson, and they could simply say, we'll set it up. But if you try to storm the place, I think you're probably going to get arrested. Am I off base on that?
Kevin, you nailed it. Look, I think what Democrats are trying to do today is showing us exactly who they are. This was a political stunt that really backfired. They're using violence. They're inciting fear against law enforcement. And they continue to be a party that says nobody is above the law unless you're a Democrat and you're a politician. They're continuing to show the American people, instead of being at a higher bar, I think politicians should be. I mean, they're the ones that are leaders today. They're continuing to get these fringe groups out there to attack other Americans that don't agree with them. This is a very cut and dry case. Anybody who was there that was assaulting a police officer should be fined for trespassing and behind bars today. This is very cut and dry. This is not a political issue. This is about protecting the American citizens. And law enforcement were dragged out there having to arrest people like this New Jersey mayor instead of doing their jobs. And I think this is despicable. This law and order has to be restored in America today. This is why more and more Democrats are coming towards the Republican Party. It's just common sense.
And you know what? Frankly, they create a terribly unsafe situation for the working women and men of ICE. They're simply trying to keep the peace there. It's one thing, again, to come and protest, but if you try to storm the place, things can escalate, quite frankly. I've been on stories out in the field. It can change in a blink. Let me ask you, while we have you, Mahek, about something that's been in the news. Stephen Miller talking about habeas corpus. The suspension thereof, in particular when we're being invaded. Listen to this sound. I want to get your reaction and see if you can explain to the folks at home why this is perhaps alarming some.
The Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not.
I think the last thing he said there is incredibly important. It depends on what the courts do. If they want to keep having one person in some district basically lord over the entire executive branch in the entire country, things can happen, like what Stephen Miller just described there. Explain, if you would, Mahek, what he means by that and why there seems to be a great deal of uproar on the left.
Look, Kevin, I think the first and the last line of defense today are our courts. And when you have judicial activism where courts aren't following the rule of law, then President Trump has to look at every single constitutional option, and it has to be on the table, such as suspending habeas corpus. President Trump has a constitutional duty to protect the American people under Article 2. That meant he invoked the Alien Enemies Act. He was swiftly trying to defend not only our borders, but the American people against Tren de Aragua and all of these threats that we've been facing for 4 years of public safety. The Supreme Court's decision previously has been misguided. The Supreme Court has told President Trump he needs to pause and allow for these trials to occur for every single illegal alien. But at the end of the day, it's public safety and national security that's going to trump habeas corpus. So I believe under the suspension clause, it specifically states if an individual, if a president is looking at an invasion or they're looking at rebellion, then we need to suspend habeas corpus. And I think that's where President Trump is looking today. Can we give these illegal immigrants tons of due process? I mean, our courts are going to be backlogged for years. And what about the good legal immigrants that want to come to our country? I mean, we have to look at both sides of this today. So I think Stephen Miller is correct. President Trump should be looking at suspending habeas corpus if the Supreme Court cannot understand that the rule of law is with him and not these judicial activist judges.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, too, because in effect, then, what would have happened is over the last 4 years, if you let in, 20 million people, then you're going to try to have 20 million different court dates for people who ostensibly, some have argued, most of whom, or many of whom, broke the law just to get here. This is a fascinating legal case. You and I could talk about it all day. But very quickly, before we let you go, I just want to get your sense on one other topic. You and I have had a chance to chat off camera about this judicial activism. How concerned are you, Mahek, in the 40 seconds we have left, about this trend? I don't recall this ever happening for President Obama, and certainly not for President Biden.
Well, look, Kevin, I think that the Democrats were always going to use lawfare. They couldn't win by assassinating President Trump. They couldn't win by stopping him to go on every single ballot as he continued to move and win this election. So what are they trying to do now? They're trying to stop President Trump through judicial activism. And what we need today is expedited removal of illegal immigrants, not bureaucrat delays. So again, I'm calling on the Supreme Court. They are the last line of defense. And I think a lot of these judicial activist judges should not have their positions. I think it's such a disgrace. And I'm calling on Congress to pass a law. We have to put an end to this madness.
I think there are a great number of Americans who would certainly agree with that. Mahek Cook joining us today from the great state of Ohio. Mahek, great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, look, I don't support all these types of conversation. I mean, whatever y'all say. My own is get the trade deals done. The border, I like what I'm seeing. All the wars ended. Look, we don't have time to be petty talking and stuff. We need to move, all right?
The elite Columbia University is finally doing something.
University officials temporarily suspended 65 students who participated in a campus takeover. Earlier this week, a mob stormed the library where students were studying for finals. Witnesses talked with Fox News.
I started recognizing students who were suspended last year who had not returned to school. And that's when I started to get a little nervous. But security was just on it.
This is record speed for Columbia. And, I really appreciate that because it means that we were able to go back to normal campus life. It is ridiculous that accountability is as difficult as it is.
No doubt. Education Secretary Linda McMahon posted this. Columbia's leadership responded with resolve, and we commend the administration for a swift response that restored order and clarified that anti-Semitic mobs will no longer be tolerated. It will be important to see what action is taken against those arrested. Well, she's got a good point there. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik in focus yesterday.
This is why President Trump's action to defund places like Columbia, places like Harvard, who have refused to protect students on campus. We need to have a zero tolerance policy for anti-Semitism, but also for violence, riots, and destruction of property. I fully support revoking those foreign visas and deporting. And the steps that have been taken by President Trump and Secretary Rubio are tremendous. We need to keep doing that.
The New York Post editorial agrees in this piece titled, "Throw the Book at Masked Columbia Thugs." Alexis McAdams is at Columbia University in New York City. Alexis.
Hey, Harris. Well, the protests here at Columbia are not new, but the shift in how they handled it is. They did call the police in here pretty quickly. This coming after dozens now temporarily suspended here from Columbia University, and others are banned now from this campus. They can no longer enter those gates here behind us, including alumni. As for those mass protesters, police know who they are. They've been fingerprinted, and now the White House says if any of them are here on a visa, they can say bye-bye.
They want to come here and support our enemies, a terrorist organization. They want to take over college campuses. They want to assault, security guards. They want to damage college property. They're going to be deported. They might have got away with that under Biden administration, but not under the Trump administration. You will be deported.
This is what the library looked like here after these students stormed it. 100 people wearing masks.
Oh my goodness. What is this? In Columbia University? This is what happened? What is all this? What is Columbia University turning into? What is the educational system, institution turning into?
Palestinian flags rushed the door, vandalizing bookshelves and writing things like "Columbia will burn" and "Long live the Intifada" on those desks. This was happening during finals week where students were trying to prepare.
You get expelled. I hope you get expelled. This is our school. We're paying $90,000 a year to go here. Yeah, you don't have the right to take over. Like, we're paying to be here. Are we taking? We're paying to be here. You don't care.
Yeah, paying to be here, paying big to be here. We're talking about $100,000 a year, dozens taken out in zip ties, charged with criminal trespass. More than 60 of the protesters were students. And listen to this, nearly all of them were women this time. The crackdown comes after immense pressure from the Trump administration. The White House has cut millions of dollars in Columbia's federal funding. Then the school also had to add security and a mask ban if they didn't want to lose more funding. Back out here live, the school following those policies this time, Harris. So just the other month when I was out here over at Barnard, we saw video of an administrator talking and saying, what are your demands? What can we do, to get you guys out? They didn't do that this time. They said, take off your masks and give us your IDs. We're calling the police. And that's what happened, Harris.
Yeah. Imagine where we'd be if they'd done that over a year ago.
Exactly.
Someplace different.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here.
Great reporting, as always, Alexis. Republican Senator Tim Scott of the great state of South Carolina is a member of the Education, Judiciary, and Foreign Affairs Committees. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you in person.
Absolutely.
Is it too little too late now by these colleges and universities? Look, Senator, they let this fester, Jewish hate, on the campuses. I don't know if this will be enough.
Well, listen, there's a new sheriff in town. Is the only reason why we're seeing behavior modification on college campuses is because President Donald Trump is demanding it. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart because they are following the American ethos. They're doing it because there's a new sheriff with a steel spine. And that makes all the difference in the world. I've been working with President Trump since 2017 on anti-Semitism on college campuses. He made it into an executive order. It's time for us to pass anti-Semitism definition in the committees.
I didn't remember, like I realized it contemporaneously, but I didn't remember where we've been with this. It didn't look like it does now, and you were still trying to corral the hate.
You could
that
feel
existed.
it coming. You could feel it coming in 2016, 2017 across the world, but here at home, one thing that is anti-American is hate. We've stood for generations, for centuries now, against hate. Targeting Jewish students on college campuses is disgusting. Thank God Almighty that we now have a president in office, and we need action from Congress codifying his executive order into law so that every student on campus knows.
Look at this. Do you think you can get it?
Look
I
at
know
this.
we can get it done.
Look at that.
Sad that it took the money. The threats of money to some of these universities.
He hits them where it hurts.
Yeah, well, and it counts. Because some of those students were studying for finals. Think about all the money their parents spent on those educations.
Exactly, 6 figures for a year in college, and you can't study?
So let's get to this. Some Democrats are backing off their support for alleged MS-13 member Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Fighting for
Information
liberation.
on his violent past is simply piling up now. But some Democrats say that the Trump administration trying to bring him back to America would be exactly what they would want. That's not happening. Here's Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem dealing with them yesterday on Capitol Hill.
Can you answer as to whether you have reached out to your counterpart in El Salvador to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release?
Abrego Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador and should never have been in this country and will not be coming back to this country.
Are you or DHS doing anything to comply with the 9-0 Supreme Court order to facilitate his return to the United States? Just yes or no?
This administration is following all federal court orders. Your advocacy for a known terrorist is alarming to me.
Madam Secretary.
It's alarming to me because he's a human smuggler.
Madam Secretary, I'm going to have to reclaim
and
it.
A terrorist, and he's not a U.S. citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador, and he's home. If he were to come back
Madam
here,
Secretary,
we would take him immediately back.
So he wanted to reclaim his time while the truth was being told, but he had time to do this. Remember? Some well-staged pictures of Senator Chris Van Hollen, taxpayer-funded jaunt to El Salvador last month.
Well-shaped.
He went to see Abrego Garcia in prison and demanded his release. Apparently, Van Hollen's thirst for a photo op did not impress the president of El Salvador. In the Oval Office, he said he cannot and will not be returning Abrego Garcia back to the United States. So look, Senator Scott, this looks like it's a done deal. Why are some Democrats still latching on to him?
It's unbelievable. Democrats from John Ossoff in Georgia to Chris Van Hollen in Maryland, they have one thing in common without any question. They all seem to support illegal immigrants more than they do American citizens. Just a few weeks ago, a South Carolina student lost his life because an illegal immigrant driving a car without a license killed him. Talking to that mother about the loss of her child, it's devastating. Think about Laken Riley. The one thing Democrats refuse to do is stand up for Americans when it comes to illegal immigration. It's time for us to get it right. Getting it right means doing the right thing for Americans, not for illegal immigrants.
You know, I hear the emotion in your voice, and I think sometimes we forget that lawmakers like you in these states where this is happening, you're on the ground with the victims' families.
Talking to these families, it is hard to talk to a mother about the most unnatural thing she will ever do. Bury her son. 21, 22 years old. Just trying to get an education. We can't just say, oh, that's unfortunate. No, it's criminal, and it should never have happened because Biden allowed 10 million plus illegal immigrants to come across our southern border. President Trump, in just an instant, closed that southern border. What do we have to do now? We have to get the violent criminals out first and then have a process to eliminate the rest of them. That's why I celebrate his provocative ways of saying, I'll give you $1,000 for self-deportation. What he's saying is put Americans first. That's how you put America first, and that's how you restore confidence in our legal system.
Well, and that $1,000 plus the plane ride back to wherever they are self-deporting to is a lot cheaper. And I don't just mean cash, but I mean resources, human resources, and the safety and security of Americans as well.
Absolutely.
Some among them will do violence. Most of them won't. And so President Trump says, get back in line. You can come back if you're trying to do it the right way.
Get out now, come back the right way, and we'll see what happens. But the bottom line is simply this. We have to have someone in office who understands just that. Joe Biden says, I can't close the southern border.
Yeah.
Needs Congress to do something. I think the other day it was like 3 people tried to cross the border illegally. 3.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it's down to nothing.
10,000 a day under President Biden.
Senator Scott, it is wonderful to see you in person. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you're fighting against what's happening on the Hill. There's plenty of lawfare and all of it against this administration. So I'll keep in touch to see what you can codify and what you can get done on Capitol Hill.
Look forward to exciting times coming our way.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
All right. With that being said, God bless you. Okay. Thank you. It is Monday. Everybody get on with it. Make sure you be productive this week. And of course, we're going to be back here by 9:30 because the OG is going to be signing. Y'all want to keep going to 9:30? I mean, who knows, yo? Okay. Who knows? All right. This guy is going to be signing an executive order on price reduction on drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States. Of course, he already said that on Truth Social. So everybody, if you have not subscribed to the channel, go on ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't double tap your screen, go on ahead and double tap your screen right now. It is your boy Genesis. Thank you for tuning in. Good morning. It is 7:53 a.m. It is the 12th of May, 2025. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. With that being said, your boy got a dip. I will be back here. Turn on your notification bell. It is free speech up here. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military personnel. Thank you for protecting our homeland. God bless you. Without you guys, without the military, without the veterans, there would be no America. And it's just a fact. So shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military. God bless you. And God bless the viewers. Shout out to Zyros Garden. That's our moderator for today. Well, for this morning. Okay. So, yep. God is great. God is great. Be great. All right. Be great. God is great. Love you guys. Genesis is signing out. I will be back here. Turn on your notification bell. Let's get it.